Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our webinar today, Managing Competing Priorities with Strained Budgets, Solutions for Coordinating Asset Management and CIP. First, before we get into the webinar, I would like to just kick off with some housekeeping items. This webinar will be recorded, so we will be able to give that to everybody tomorrow once after the webinar via another email. If you would like to enter questions during this webinar, we will be answering questions at the end of the webinar. But if you have them, please place your questions in the questions field on your control panel, and we'll make sure that we answer those at the end of the presentation. And then also, if you are interested in receiving a certificate of participation today, we will be making sure to send that out tomorrow as well. So you'll get a separate email with a certificate for participating in this webinar today. And with that, I will hand it off to Dan Conery, who is our Senior Director of Product Marketing, and he will introduce our presenters today, and he will also be our host for the webinar today. So Dan, take it away.
My name's Dan Conery, super excited to be on board with you today. Been waiting for this webinar for weeks as we've been working through the content. I work predominantly for this webinar on the eBuilder product, eBuilder Enterprise. I'm joined by George. George works with Cityworks, so he's going to walk us through the Cityworks product line. And then what you're actually probably all here to listen to is Chad Foley from the city of Raleigh. So a little bit of penance you have is you have to listen to George and I for a little bit, and then we're going to hand it over to Chad to take us through how the city of Raleigh is using the two products. So with that, what I want to do is take us through what is our focus today. What do we want you to take away from the webinar today? So George and I are going to talk a little bit. We're going to have a little mini two-person conversation about the challenges that are currently facing local government agencies. And our goal here is really to make sure that you understand you're not alone. We're going to talk about the marriage of capital project and enterprise asset management. So eBuilder being on the capital project management and Cityworks on the enterprise asset management. So the marriage of those two types of solutions. I'm going to give you a quick overview of eBuilder Enterprise on the capital side. George will take you through similarly on the enterprise asset management. And then again, we're going to have Chad tell us the city of Raleigh. So with that, what George and I wanted to do is we just simply have two slides here we wanted to go through. And one, I just wanted to hit on a couple areas, and I'm going to invite George to weigh in on his perspectives. But what we're seeing, for example, the American Enterprise Institute estimates a shortfall of about $106 billion in sales and income tax revenue for state and local agencies in 2021. So the reason why we chose the title of this webinar is that's just a reality. So there's been an impact due to people working from home and other reasons on revenue for government agencies. So what are you going to do about it? The reality is your infrastructure is not going to stop aging as a result. Projects that need to get kicked off aren't going to magically stop. So how do you balance that? So what I wanted to do is to give George now a chance to weigh in some of the items that are here on the lower part of the screen. So George, to you.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. I think what's interesting in all of this is that, we've been in local government since the beginning of our existence, since we launched Cityworks way long ago. And even back then there was the concept of we've got to do more with less. And with COVID, that definitely has had an amplifying effect. And yet, like you said, Dan, there's this situation is not shrinking or decreasing in terms of aging assets. And
so I'll just pick up where George was going. So again, the assets are aging, and yet if you look at the two bullets on the left-hand side where they're underlined, 98% of mayors are saying that they're expecting their operating budgets to decline for the reasons that I talked about a moment ago. And yet right below that is that those same mayors are looking to invest in infrastructure in order to generate jobs and to stimulate economic growth. So how do you do that? They seem like they're opposing priorities. How do you do more with less revenue? And so one of the things that we're hoping to push out there is there's two dimensions. One, become more efficient at what you're doing. And the other one is to prioritize what you're going to do. So what infrastructure do you need to make sure that you're spending the revenue you do have replacing, or what projects do you prioritize over others? And without good access to information, you're really just guessing. So again, it's along the lines of make sure you're spending every single dollar, every penny of every dollar of revenue you are getting, spend that well. And then the other one is prioritize the projects you're working on and use data to make those prioritizations. So with that, what we're going to talk about today is on the capital project side, which is the left-hand side, the yellow circle, which is what I'll talk about. And then on the right-hand side is the Cityworks on once you've done building the asset or doing a major renovation to the asset, how do you manage and maintain that asset over its life cycle? And there's a natural touch point between those two solutions. You have assets that have aged and need to be replaced. You need to move that from your asset management to your capital program management system, manage that project well, and then hand it back over into the asset management system once it's completed. So that could be brand new assets. It could be maintaining aged assets or just on maintenance on existing assets. So there's a natural overlap between the two products. So what I want to do is give you a little bit of a preview on what eBuilder Enterprise does, and then what Chad will do in his section is show you how City of Raleigh is using those parts of the product. So just quickly, what we do is help customers on the reduce section. So time spent chasing documents, data entry, creating reports, dealing with errors and omissions, being surprised by things running over schedule or over budget, and just information getting lost, and as a result, rework being done. So those are the areas that eBuilder is really focused on. So if any of those resonate with you, then there's probably something to learn from us. And what we're focused on and what our customers have realized is you can save up to 4% of your capital budget. So it's not really saving, but redeploying. So to make the math easy, if you had $100 million in capital spend, then what we're saying is by implementing something like an eBuilder Enterprise, you can have 4 million of that you can save and then redeploy. So it's almost like you have 104 million. On the productivity improvement, we've seen people be able to take on 3 times the amount of work with the same amount of staff. So that's the 3x in productivity improvement. And then the 30-to-1 cycle time reduction is we have case studies that we can share where, in fact, Construction Dive, an online magazine for contractors, did a survey that showed that the average owner can take up to 2 months to pay the contractor. And there's an impact, an economic impact in the supply chain as a result of that. And what we can demonstrate with our customers is our owners take typically a maximum of 14 days to at least approve the contractor invoice. Whether or not they decide to use the full net 30 on the payment terms is an internal decision, but to get it ready for payment can take from days to maybe 2 weeks. So with that, my final couple slides here is to take you through the capabilities, and we're really here for the entire life cycle of a project, from planning all the way through to operations. Operations is when we would then hand it over to Cityworks to do the operation and maintenance. So from a planning perspective, the areas that we touch on is capital planning. So again, in COVID, in fact, the first thing we heard from our existing customer base when it came to how eBuilder helped them is when they realized revenues, and if you think the government agencies are having trouble, the private sector was hit far worse. And so they were being told, we need to reprioritize our projects based on 50 to 70% reduction in funding. And so with the use of eBuilder, they were able to do what if analysis and cash flow projections with the capital planning capabilities. Funding, for those that deal with funding, to make sure you're allocating your funding correctly, and risk and exposure. So those are the areas we focus around planning. We have a full set of suite of capabilities around the design phase. So we have fully integrated BIM models. Of course, those of you in local city governments using Esri, you already have that with the Esri platform. Constructability, design reviews, schematic design, so we can help you with all the design phase. Moving into procurement, so now that you've decided you want to do it, you need to go out and do the bidding. So we have an entire bid tabulation, RFP management capability. into construction, which is really the core competency and what separates eBuilder from the other solutions on the market. Deep 25 years of experience in how to manage costs. And Chad actually has a great example of that in his presentation. And then all the way to operations. So one of the areas when we talk with mutual customers of Cityworks and eBuilder is as-builts. So get the as-builts that were collected during construction and feed them into Cityworks so that you can update your asset management system. So that's, again, the natural handoff between eBuilder and Cityworks. So the customers we serve, clearly those that are on the phone today, and you're going to see a tremendous overlap between what I'm showing you and what George is going to show you. And that's why both of us are here to talk with you today. And I'm going to leave you and then hand it over to my colleague to take you through Cityworks, that we are the trusted solution with owners. We've been doing this for 25 years. We love you guys. So that's all we think about is owner organizations. And we have well over 1,000 years of knowledge within our own company about how owners operate. We have helped owners successfully deliver hundreds of thousands of projects. And the number that I'm most excited about is we crossed over $1 trillion in projects that have been successfully delivered through our platform. So with that, George, if you were able to reconnect, I want to hand it over to you, my friend.
All right, thank you, Dan, and thanks for bailing me out on that, on the synergy slide there of how we come together. Yeah, a little bit about Cityworks. We've been in business since 1996. Got our start in water and wastewater utilities, and out of that grew into what you see here on the screen. And basically what we provide today is a solution for managing complex networks of assets, and this ranges, of course, from water, public works, and whatnot, into airports, into electric and gas utilities. We have a permitting solution that I'll talk about here in a moment that stretches across planning and community development. We also have customers that use it for buildings and facilities and look at assets within those facilities as well. And similar to Dan, an eBuilder, the customers that we serve, there's a lot of intersection between them. Of course, our main have been local government, water, wastewater, but in all of these areas, you'll find Cityworks providing the capabilities for asset management, for inspections, for tests, test tracking, permits, all of that. And that's because of the nature of Cityworks, the configurable nature of Cityworks, that it can be applied across the board. And it's not just a, sort of focused solution on any one type of asset, but rather very similar to other platforms that you may use, applies across the board. So if you think of Cityworks, kind of like step back and imagine it as these two halves, where the one half is this asset management system that can take input from the public or even IoT sensors. More recently, that's what we've been getting into. And with Trimble, in fact, we do have an IoT solution for water and wastewater that we have deployed named the System of Action that I encourage you to check out on our website. But from there, the workflow can take the journey of going into an investigation or inspection, where those results can then come into a work order to track any repairs that need to happen. And then finally, we learn from what happens through analysis and reporting and geographic analysis and reporting. So it gives us a very deliberate and purpose view of where we ought to spend, capital dollars that need to take place. The other half of the solution, and these are totally integrated, fully integrated, but they can operate on their own as well, is our permitting solution, which a great many organizations use, and it's the typical permitting system that you would expect to find in a building department for building out subdivisions or building out remodels on homes, and tracking that permit application from the front end by the contractor or the citizen all the way through issuing the permit to inspection, and then of course doing analysis. And what's great about our permitting solution is it can actually work for utilities as well, because it's agnostic of and has an agnostic workflow engine that can be tailored and configured. So we find utilities leveraging that, and together, we can serve a great many of the needs of our customers. And one of the main differentiators of our system is this concept of GIS centric. When we came into the market, we saw that a lot of these organizations, utilities, local governments and whatnot, were investing lots of effort into capturing their assets in GIS and in Esri GIS. And at the time, the systems were managing those assets separately in a non-spatial tabular database. And we thought, well, there's probably a better way to do this here and to leverage the assets directly from GIS. And that way they're maintained in one place, captured in one place, updated in one place. And this is what launched the idea of Cityworks is let's just leverage those assets and build work management permitting on top of that. And we took it one step further over the course of time and felt like, well, Cityworks does quite a bit for these organizations, but so does Esri. Let's look at leveraging other areas of their platform and incorporate it as sort of first-class citizens within the Cityworks platform. So for example, in the middle there, you see ArcGIS Hub, and that serves as our destination portal for creating a two-way engagement with citizens and with contractors on engaging with the organization. We also have an integration and a tie-in with ArcGIS Indoors in the bottom right there, where we can now see facilities in this great sort of indoor view, 2D view that will eventually become a 3D view. And so visualizing your assets in that dimension is very, very helpful. We leverage Esri's insights for ArcGIS for business analytics and whatnot, and repurpose that named Cityworks Analytics to be able to gain valuable insight into what it is you're doing and where you need to apply. And of course, our mobile solutions tie very, very nicely with Esri's mobile solutions. And you can leverage ours or leverage theirs, or leverage both even, to do the work that you need. And very similar to the Esri platform, we support 3 fundamental systems. So it's not just software that you're getting, but you're getting a platform that gives you tools to engage with internally across all the profiles of users that you have, but also more widely with the citizens and the contractors that are out there. And all of that then gets stored in an open system of record that, when combined with Esri, provides a total view of everything that's happening. That platform can then integrate with other solutions because both are built on a stack of APIs that are accessible and available. And then, of course, we provide a system of insight that you can see what's happening, and you can look at trends, you can look at emerging hotspots, you can look at spots where you have improved and those issues are going away. And the geographic view really gives power to that. And so for us, it's all about creating responsive organizations. I love what Dan said about you guys. We're just as passionate. Those of you that are on the call that use Cityworks, that to be the case. But for us, it's all about this. It's about providing you with not just software, but a platform that helps you be responsive, that helps you serve your customers as well in an unparalleled way and in the best way. And connecting all these departments and groups within your organization. And all of this has led to more than 750 customers leveraging Cityworks, here in North America, but across the world. And at last count, more than 80 million people are impacted by what Cityworks provides these customer organizations. So the footprint is pretty significant, and the impact and the benefits are pretty significant. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Chad, great customer, to walk us through his part.
Hey, thanks, George. Let me share my screen here. All right, thanks. So yeah, it's kind of fun to do this today, just really telling the kind of story of how we use eBuilder and Cityworks. But So my name's Chad Foley. I work at the City of Raleigh in the IT department, and I manage a team of 2, and we support eBuilder and Cityworks. Raleigh is the capital of North Carolina. It's called the City of Oaks. We have a lot of oak trees, about 500,000 in population. We've had Cityworks for over 10 years now, and it's pretty much what I call like a mass adoption. It's used across many different departments. And then we've had eBuilder almost 2 years now. We have it in 2 different departments, and it's kind of growing as we roll it out. We have a $502 million CIP budget, but that being said, in this COVID time, our revenues are down like more than 25%, but we're still very lucky because Raleigh is a growing city. There's still construction going on. But yeah, we're having to tighten the belt quite a bit. So I wanted to talk a little bit about a smart cities effort, because I think this discussion kind of folds into it in kind of an interesting way. So a couple of years ago, we hired a company called IDC to help us create a smart city strategy. If you go to RaleighNC.gov, you can actually download that strategy document. And one of their recommendations was to create a smart city coordinator position. And so we did. We filled that position, and that person has several initiatives. One of them is they have an annual Smart Cities Summit. They've actually rebranded it to Connected Communities Summit last year. And at that summit, there's all kinds of like fun and shiny, high-tech things, like what I call shiny initiatives, where, like drones or electric vehicles. But what I'm kind of more interested in is some of the non-shiny things that we'll talk about. So one of our shiny initiatives is, but yet it's still kind of a good cost-conscious effort, is we are using our traffic cameras to analyze traffic so that we can do traffic studies, whereas before we spend a lot of money hiring vendors to do traffic studies for us. So one thought was, we could use this traffic analytics and count these cars ourselves. So that's kind of an example of a shiny initiative but is actually cost savings. Another kind of fun thing we're doing is we integrated Cityworks with the Waze traffic app. So when somebody's using Waze and they report a pothole or a sign missing or something, it creates a work order right in Cityworks. And those are fun and shiny things. But we got to keep the lights on, and we got to do it budget minded. So my definition of a smart city is really simple. It's not these shiny things. It's really just about following the dollars, being able to effectively track your capital spending kind of in a standard way across different departments, and being able just to track your cost to maintain your infrastructure and assets. I mean, that to me is smart if you know these things. How much does it cost to maintain a part per year, and how can you use that information to budget for, say, if you want to have a new part? How many sewer repairs did we do last month or last year, and how much did it cost the city? It also helps us prioritize our work based on the asset conditions. If you're constantly doing lots of repairs in one area, what's going on there, and is that an older asset? So a lot is just really simply knowing where your dollars are going. So before we implemented these solutions, and I know you're definitely probably in the same boat, you're not alone in this. We had no real way or no standard on tracking capital. We did it differently across different departments. Sometimes a contractor would work on a project in one department and then another project with another department, and they were being, the finances were handled differently. One department would do it kind of including tax, and one would do handling tax separately. It was confusing the contractors. We kind of coined an acronym called YAS, yet another spreadsheet, where everything was just on different spreadsheets on people's desktops or kind of all through different shared folders, hard to find things. And then different groups were just doing things different ways. So we had no real standard way to report these capital spending up to our executive management. And so that was just a problem. And I know that's probably a very common thread. So a little bit about how we use Cityworks. So we have Cityworks is being used across 7 different departments. It's kind of become ubiquitous here at the City of Raleigh. I'd say pretty much everyone knows what Cityworks is, and any type of field work or work orders in the field is done in Cityworks, where they're tracking their labor, their equipment, and their material cost. I often joke that if the Parks Department is putting a chalk on the softball field, there's a work order for that. So let's see, we have about 600 users in Cityworks currently that are active. About 100 of those are using the mobile app. We recently onboarded our wastewater treatment plant, and all their inventory is being managed in the storeroom module. There's a storeroom inventory module that we use for all our inventory. We're getting ready to use another module called Operational Insights that helps us kind of score the asset condition and the business risk with these assets based on various factors and age. We put, it all started with the Parks Department with Cityworks first, but we just kind of slowly over time just onboarded other groups within all these seven different groups. We have the convention center uses it for their preventative maintenance. We have a lot of activity with just city-owned facilities and building maintenance trades work like HVAC, plumbing repairs, and things like that. Stormwater group is a heavy user of solid waste services. We have a lot of cross-departmental workflows where, the utility department will do a sewer repair, and then the transportation department will do the asphalt paving over top of that repair, and they will invoice each other for that. And these work orders they have are tied together. I'd say out of all the different systems we have at the city or the different software systems, Cityworks is probably, it is definitely the one that people like the most. It's the most user friendly. We have a lot of non-technical people using this in the field, not computer people at all. I see our solution is on premise, but there is a cloud offering, I think, as well. So here's an example of a paper inspection for a traffic signal. We're required by law to inspect the traffic lights at least once a year. And with a lot of our implementation looked like this, where we just transcribe this into Cityworks through configuration on our own ourselves. And then, another example, these are just kind of various work order categories for transportation, but it's just pretty much any work in the field is dragged in Cityworks. So you can see the volume just for 2020, even because of COVID, we didn't stop providing city services. I think we've got 150,000 work orders so far this year across these different departments, about 89,000 inspections, and that's mostly preventative maintenance type work. And then service requests there's 323,000 of those. Those are probably due to the call center. We have a call center that if any citizen calls in about anything, they log it in Cityworks as a service request. So on to eBuilder. This is a little bit how we use eBuilder. We, like I said, we've had a little over, almost 2 years now, and we have about 75 users across 2 different groups, the stormwater construction group and the roadway design and construction. And we're actually have a meeting later today to talk to public utilities because we're going to try to roll it out to them in 2021. We have, currently about 51 projects in eBuilder, tracking about 67 million in cost. And what you're looking at here is a process flow or a workflow. And one of the good things about eBuilder is that you don't necessarily have to master the whole system. You don't have to know the ins and outs of all of eBuilder. You really just have to know what your role is and what your part is. So it has this like ball in court concept where based on the step in the workflow, if you're, say, the fiscal manager or fiscal analyst, when that workflow gets to your step, you'll get an email, you'll log in, you'll be on that workflow step, and you'll either approve or add a document or whatever the step requires, or you can reject back to the step before. So it's really just that role, and knowing what you have to do there is much easier than having to learn the whole system. And let's see. Oh, here's another workflow example. This is our IDR, Inspector Daily Report workflow. So the inspector in the start step, he fills out his IDR, and it's, he's marking line items of for an active construction project for materials and quantity and cost of that's being used that day. And so he'll mark that, and that's pulling from the line item from the commitment. And then he will send that to the general contractor for review, because our contractors, our vendors, have logins to eBuilder. And then they'll be able to see that that the ball's in their court on their step, and they'll can approve, and it just helps them be on the same page as to what's going on in the project. And it really actually kind of keeps them to task and keeps them honest. And then they have a view into where we are with that daily report. And then at the end of the month, each of these daily reports is pulling from the commitment, and it's done automatically. All the calculations are automatic, but at the end of the month, then we can cut the check to the vendor. But we do that out of our PeopleSoft system, and there's somewhat of a manual handoff at that point, but we're talking about possibly integrating that in the future. Here's just an example report. I think this is a monthly status report. I think the point here is that all the commitments and the budgets they start out as a template, like basically an Excel template that's uploaded into eBuilder, and then based on the workflow and how you set it up, all the calculations and pulling from the commitments for these daily reports to create these checks to the vendors, that's all automated. You couldn't do that in Excel. It just pulls in based on how you set it up. You can pull it in from multiple accounts from the budget, but and you can see these different commitment line items and the cost and the quantity. Here's another just example report. This is more of a all projects type report for the roadway design and construction group. These reports are all done right now. They're being done by the end users. The reporting is very intuitive. You don't really have to do the database or anything like that. It's all kind of based on different searches and criteria, and kind of like a drag and drop. And you can pin these reports to your homepage or your make dashboards out of them, and graphs and charts and things. So we have dozens and dozens of these, but the point is the reporting is very user friendly. I'm glad to, as an IT guy, to not have to build these reports for the end users. They can do it themselves. So some of the keys to success with eBuilder implementation so far is we decided only to do new projects, not to do existing or older projects. So as a new project would come up, we'd start tracking it in eBuilder, just kind of a slow rollout. And then we have a governance model where we, each department or division has one or two power users, and we really try to give them, more privileges and administrative rights to just kind of empower them and allow them to manage their business, because I don't know construction business is like these people do, so they need to be able to do whatever they need to do in the system. We have a user group that meets quarterly, and we just share ideas across different departments. Like if we're doing construction projects, it shouldn't be all that much different between a parks construction project and a stormwater construction project. We try to streamline those workflows and share them kind of across different groups. So we try to standardize, and where we can't standardize on a workflow, we could have if it's parks, go into this workflow branch. If it's stormwater, go into this workflow branch. We also have office hours every other Friday where people can just stop by and get help with any kind of eBuilder questions. And then we do training. We do training to the contractors and also to our internal employee staff. It was helpful to have a senior level mandate saying you will use eBuilder, because they were tired of getting just various reports up on these different construction projects in different formats. And then we have had help from our data analytics team, which is 2 people in IT that do a lot of reporting. They use Power BI, and they've been very helpful. Here's an example of one of those Power BI reports. And again, we have dozens of these as well. This is just at a quick glance, you can just see, okay, we had this many work orders. This is from Cityworks, but open by type and status, the average hydrant work order cost, the number of water main breaks per 100 miles, the water loss associated with that. So just having this data at our fingertips and having it kind of be serviceable, where a manager can just log in and look at his dashboard and know where the project is, or what state the project's in, where it is, if it's over budget, what the progress is. I mean, that really allows us to make these data-driven decisions to make what I consider a true smart city. So that's about all I have. If anybody has any questions, I think we have time.
We do. We have time and we have questions. So that's a good combination. So you can stop sharing if you want, Chad, and then our beautiful pictures will take up most of the screen. So awesome. So I want to encourage folks to continue to ask questions. We have a handful of them already, so I'll work my way through them. So I'm going to take a couple of these that were pretty straightforward. One was a question that came in about acronym definition. So I had a little bit of fun with the person saying they were asking what CIP stood for, and I said we're using too many TLAs, which is an acronym for 3-letter acronyms. So CIP stands for Capital Improvement Program. So it's typically budget set aside that impacts the capital side of your cost. So get that one out of the way. One of the other questions was about the 3x productivity improvement that I had mentioned during my part of the presentation. So we actually have a case study. So those interested, we can send you that specific case study. But it was an example where this was pre-COVID. Somebody's program had increased by 300%. So again, simple math, they had a $100 million program and went to $300 million, and they did not have to increase the staff of project managers and other support staff to manage those projects. They were able to take that tripling in volume because of the efficiency that they were gaining in the use of eBuilder. So those were the two quick, simple answers. So a question, I'm going to change the question slightly. The actual question is, can eBuilder be used for contracts, leasing, and other real estate work? But I'd like to, Chad, spin that question a little bit and just ask you, for contracts, leasing, or real estate stuff, what solution would you use at the city? And then I'll answer the question from our perspective.
Yeah, I'm sure it could handle that. We currently use eBuilder for construction and design and planning. So we have some projects that are in eBuilder that is like more of a planning project. It's an asset lifecycle, asset condition study on our stormwater infrastructure. There's no construction involved. It's just a consultant doing some GIS technical work. And so, I mean, you could probably adapt it to quite many things that you wouldn't maybe think about construction related. But so I would say, yeah, we do real estate at the city of Raleigh too. So that might be an interesting group to demo it to, as far as kind of getting them to standardize their processes.
Yeah, and so the part I just add to Chad's answer is, as he showed you in the two examples, the workflow capability. What's also behind that is a custom form builder and reporting capability. So we do have people using eBuilder Enterprise for the different items that was asked about. So it absolutely is certainly possible. One of the other questions in a similar vein was around OpEx versus CapEx. So operational expenses versus capital expenses. How do you separate those clearly between Cityworks and eBuilder, or is there a third solution we haven't even touched on for projects that are operational expenses versus capital expenses?
Is that a question for me?
That's for you, Chad. Yep. Sorry.
So yeah, I think we kind of keep it separate in my mind, at least, where the operational expenses, just getting an insight to these different work order costs or work activity costs. That's been huge for us, just to kind of know, like I said, how many repairs did we do last month and what did it cost us. Whereas on the capital improvement side, in my mind, that's kind of a new world to me, where I've been 10 years with Cityworks doing operations and that type of cost. Whereas the capital projects I'm learning, like somebody asked earlier, I didn't know what CIP meant a few months ago, or a couple years ago actually, but so yeah, I think there is some opportunity for some overlap there, but we need to start thinking about it a little more holistically from a workflow standpoint. Maybe even how it folds in with permitting. We really would love to get those BIM drawings and CAD drawings and things from eBuilder, because that helps our maintenance folks who need to know where the HVAC system is located. They need that information, and that needs to really be tied into GIS. So I think there's some opportunity for some kind of marriage of some of that.
Perfect. So
answers.
Go ahead, George.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to say, Chad, that kind of answers a couple of other questions that we've received here regarding, integration between the two products, Cityworks eBuilder and kind of the workflow there. I think your point about getting that information from eBuilder into like ArcGIS, for example, really then makes it available across the organization. But especially with Cityworks, since it's GIS centric, so those drawings then become part of that. The as-builts become part of the work orders and whatnot that can be leveraged. And vice versa. Inspections that are happening can then be provided and viewed out of eBuilder. Generally, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I forgot to mention that eBuilder has a kind of like a document management solution built in, where there's kind of a standard folder structure for all your artifacts for the project. And having that flow into a GIS or part of, basically if it's in GIS, it can be in Cityworks. That I could see some real value there. So maybe there's a future opportunity, and with some API work. And you mentioned the indoors. We actually did acquire indoors just prior to COVID, and we're going live with that in January for our wastewater treatment plant to do vertical assets. And then that's another group we're getting ready to onboard into eBuilder too, is the vertical assets kind of construction division. We're building a civic campus that it's a huge project, and I'm gonna there's 3D model that as well and put that in indoors.
Good. So one of the other ones for you, Chad, how are material records, certifications, and approvals dealt with by the city in either of the systems?
That's a good question, and I don't know if I know the answer to that. Can you repeat it one more time? Material certifications?
So material records, certifications, and approvals.
I'm more in the IT support world. I could be happy to follow up on that.
Okay.
Talk to
We'll add that for follow up.
All of our material though is stored in storeroom for Cityworks, unless it's material for an active construction project. That would be an eBuilder.
So one of the other questions is around, you talked about your roadmap for success, and one of them was holding office hours. So there's just a request, you could dig into that a little bit more and explain what you're doing and how it's working.
Well, I mean, if people have a question, they'll open a support ticket sometimes, or they'll just call or email me or message me on Teams. But we're doing this just almost kind of just as an idea. Hey, prior to COVID, feel free to drop by what we call the airport lounge, which was like an open area in our building. If you have any eBuilder questions, we have donuts and things, and it just kind of stuck around. And so we're now doing it virtually, but it's just been a nice way to kind of get to know the end users and have them feel open to just come with any type of questions, get some one-on-one. There's usually at least 2 or 3 people there each Friday. that and the user group have been a great success. We have a Cityworks user group and an eBuilder user group, and just to kind of understand what these people are doing day to day, and have them share information, try to kind of share notes.
Good. So this is another question. I'm gonna add a little bit to it because I'm curious actually. So the question itself is around Cityworks when you started. How long did it take to get it up and running? How long before you started to get a positive return on that investment? And then it's similarly with eBuilder. But before you do that, what I'd like to do is what caused you to start looking for Cityworks? And then similarly, eBuilder. You're in a future state, but you had a past state before. What triggered it, and how long was your return on investment?
Well, Cityworks kind of started before my time. I was working on other projects, other systems, but I do know that it started out of just demand from the Parks Department. I think they just heard of it and wanted to just track their work and their labor costs, their equipment costs, material cost. That was over 10 years ago. And then it was only Parks that used it for many years. Actually, I think the facilities and operations folks started using it as well. It was kind of organically growing from word of mouth. And so IT kind of wanted to get ahead of that and assist. And, we added a couple more staff members in IT, that team I talked about, of 2 other people. And then we started to see this mass adoption. It was like for years it went on just in parks and facilities and ops, or building maintenance folks. And then I think there was just a critical mass point where this software was improving, because this was over 10 years ago. And then people that started using it started liking it. They started using the mobile app in the field where they didn't have to be connected and they could still track their work. And then now it's just kind of become a huge thing. So I would say there was many years of quiet around it, and then I think when public utilities got their hands on it, it just exploded. But with eBuilder, our implementation was about 4 months long with Trimble, and they helped us with our workflows and things. And then it took us maybe another 3 to 4 months to kind of really get rolling with it, and where we could do the workflows on our own. Add new ones, tweak the existing ones. And we're still kind of in that phase where we're just kind of going from group to group and trying to basically grow the system, grow the adoption.
There are a couple of questions in here, George. I don't know if you wanted to go ahead and ask them. I put your name next to them.
Sorry, I was in the middle of responding one. Dan, do you want to call it out for me, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's probably for George, but probably for Chad, but it's some Cityworks questions as far as where do you track your main breaks and leaks?
So those would, Chad. Yeah, those would be work orders, and they're a work order template for each of those. Pretty standard. We set all that stuff up ourselves. They have custom fields, like kind of user-defined fields, where they may track some additional information, like, I don't know, volume or whatever they want, really. We actively use a lot of custom fields. And then work orders, they're attached to an asset on the map, and so you can kind of look at that history of that asset over time. We could easily put together a map of, historic main breaks and leaks around the area. I'm sure we have that somewhere.
So good job, Chad. You actually answered the follow-up question the person asked, so with what you just said. So good anticipation. I think the other one on the Cityworks side is, can this be used for public safety divisions?
Yes, I would think so. I try not to bother those guys because I know they're busy with important things, but any type of work in the field or even inspection, can easily be set up in Cityworks. The main goal, or the main benefit there, is it's easy to just add in your 2 hours of labor, And if you make, say, I don't know, $20 an hour, it's $40 of labor cost on that work order. Or if you have any material or equipment items. So if you want to capture the cost of work in the field, that's probably the easiest way to do it, just to set up a work order. So our public safety people are not using it, but they often, I think, desire some sort of workflows where there'll be an approval process or go from one person to another. So at some point, I'll try to kind of show them the potential there, so they're not just using, I don't know, a Survey 123 form, because I know they use a lot of those, where they could do a true workflow in Cityworks.
George, anything you wanted to add to that answer as far as other customers?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great answer Chad provided on the public safety side, and somewhat tangentially connected, emergency management. Cityworks is used a lot by those groups. We have a state agency that uses it for that. We have many municipal organizations that use it for that, and creating safe conditions and whatnot for citizens after disaster strikes and whatnot, and to be able to do FEMA reporting so that they can get reimbursed.
Yeah, we do that. If there's a hurricane or something, everything's tracked in Cityworks, and it really makes FEMA reimbursement a lot easier. So we a lot of the material items, we have FEMA cost in there on those items. But
yeah, so one of the attendees had mentioned eBuilder. One of the stories of lore inside the company is after Sandy hit, and now, of course, with Cityworks, and that's much better and much more appropriate to be tracked inside of Cityworks. So another question: do you review claims history of your projects to prioritize which projects in eBuilder to work on? Managing claims against city, not contractors, although the safety component of eBuilder would show the contractor claim history. So are you doing any type of analysis like that today? And if you're not, is that something that you're considering in the future?
You were breaking up a little. Did you say claims, like a legal claim?
Yeah, so claims, yeah, any sort of claims against the city around assets, and which one should you use that as a way to prioritize projects?
I don't know the answer to that, but that's a really good question, and I will ask about that. I imagine our risk management group would be interested, but I don't know. I'll try to find that out. Well, okay. I think our emails might be available if anyone wants to contact me directly. Feel free to.
Cool, and I really think I want to conclude giving you, Chad, any closing comments that you have on the webinar. We still have a bunch of other questions. We will follow up post the webinar with folks. So Chad had a couple, I know I had a couple, and there's some in here I know we're going to need to follow up on. So I wanted to hand it over to you, Chad. Do you have any closing comments? And then George and myself.
I guess just that it's not all peachy creamy. We still have a lot of challenges, and just from a efficiency and kind of standardization. But I will say that I do think we're going the right direction with trying to use these tools to kind of standardize our processes as much as possible. I'm not an expert in either, but I know enough to, I think, make it work. And and then a lot of our end users or more the power users can also create their own workflows and own processes. So if I can get them to do that themselves, then that's less volume of work for me. So that's kind of a nice thing from an IT perspective.
And also, yeah, by the way, just to piggyback on that.
It'll be interesting to see where we are a year from now as we kind of get more adoption.
So what I've heard is you're already signing up for the webinar 1 year from now. We'll do where are they now?
Yeah,
I was just going to mention that your point about being able to help empower your end users to help themselves goes back to that productivity improvement that I mentioned, the 3x. So if you're not leveraging technology, then you're hiring people. So you're spending the money, you're just spending it in people rather than technology. So I'm going to let George close, but my closing thoughts are more just a thank you to Chad. Thank you for everyone for the great questions. You overwhelmed us, which is always the intent of a good webinar, too many questions to answer. Hopefully what you take away from this webinar is twofold. One, you're dealing with two products and companies, underlying divisions within Trimble that just love working with owners, and specifically with local government owners. We're deeply passionate about this. Hopefully for those that aren't using one or either of the solutions, we'll have an opportunity to continue the dialogue. So I just want to say thank you to Chad, and I want to say thank you to everybody for giving us time out of your afternoon. And George, you can take us home.
Yeah, and likewise, for me, thank you everyone for joining and your great questions and the dialogue. And I do think let's continue to reach out to one another. And nothing more to add to what you said there, Dan. I think is perfectly said and well said, Chad. Great insight. And I too am going to register for the one in a year from now. So thanks again, everybody.
All right, thank you.